Okay, YouTubers, boys and girls, space detectives, pareidolia police, and quasi-scientific people who deny everything. Right, today, let's get on with it, because it's going to be a real quick one today. I'm going over something today that I published originally back in 2014. And this is an interesting little thing, and I'm not really sure what it is. But maybe some of you out there might have a better idea. I don't know. So leave a comment below if you think it's something else. But I think this is some kind of plant, or at least possibly a rock with plant growth on it. Maybe a mixture of the two. I don't know. So we've got two images to look at now. The beauty of this find is there are two images of it, and they're both fairly clear. We have this one here, where it's near the top, just here. This is from Sol 487, and this was taken right back in 2013. So I found this probably about 6 months after it was published on their website, because it took me that long to go through all the images, and I found this back in 2014, so it was the year later I published it. Here's the other image of it, where it's down here, it's near the bottom. So we've got two quite good quality images here from the Curiosity Rover, and they both have it in, one near the top and one right at the bottom there. So there'll be links to those. So there's two images to download if you wish. If you don't want to do that, of course, you can come to the Gigapan. This one's by Todd, and this is Curiosity Rover Sol 487 Composites by Todd. Okay, this is actually quite good, but the problem with this one is it's a good quality pan, but you can't really zoom in that far. But let me show you where to look. There'll be a link to this below, so you can click on that and go straight to this. You should be able to manage that even on your mobile phone as well. It's near the sort of centre left of the image, and you've got this group of rocks here. There's like 6 rocks there, 6 or 7 actually, larger rocks. And between this one and this one, there's this sort of angled one here, and this one up here. We have what looks like the cacti plant or fungi, whatever it is, on Mars. But this is as far as it will zoom in. But that's not bad. The problem is, when you over zoom with these images, actually they tend to look worse. It actually looks slightly better from this distance, as I'll show you in a second, because basically it's only probably 2 or 3 inches tall, maybe 4 or 5. I would say more like 2 or 3. This is really quite tiny. And when I zoom out, I'll show you what I mean. The rover's obviously back here, down at the bottom of the image, but of course the mast cam is 7 foot up in the air, so it's taken from an elevation of 7 feet up, and the rover's just taken a bunch of images. There's 16 in this pan, and they've been stitched together here. I've actually done a quick pan of it myself, because I wanted to zoom in closer, but of course you can just download the individual images if you want to look closer. So there it is. You can navigate quite easily to that. If you find this big rock here near the middle of the image, the sort of angled rock there, it's kind of in 2 parts. You can go to my latest playlist I've put together called Fungi and Plants Found on Mars Surface, which I only made yesterday, and I've got all my sort of plant looking things on Mars and put them in a playlist here. There's 14 of them, but some of them contain more than one thing. Some of them contain multiple examples of petrified wood and tree stumps and vines, plants, fungi, moss, lichen, and possible trees and stuff like that growing on the surface. So some of these are satellite images. Most of them aren't. Most of these are Curiosity Rover images. But the reason I've done this is because basically in the news recently there was a bit of fuss about mushrooms on Mars, and if you just type in mushrooms on Mars on Google, you'll get a bunch of things come up. I think I've put some of these on my ArtAlienTV Mars magazine page. This one here, I think, by the Express. A lot of scientists are now saying that these little round things, which they call spherules, may well be puffballs. They're tiny. They're only about, some of them are only like 5 mil, some are like a centimetre, some are bigger, but most of them are tiny. About between 5 and 10 mil, most of them. But some of them look actually have stems, like I've shown in some of my videos recently. So they may well be fungi, and I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be. And as I said in my recent video, which was a reload of an earlier video, it is possible that fungi spores are being spread by the rover itself, because fungi spores can lay dormant in the ground, just below the surface, for probably a very, very long time, maybe thousands of years. And if something was to drive over that ground and disturb the soil, which the rover does on a daily basis, then those spores could then be disturbed and spread, and perhaps blow around in the wind where they would have been laying dormant otherwise. Okay, so that is a possibility which hasn't been ruled out. And you will get some articles which are very pro sort of fungi or plants on Mars, and there are some which are very skeptical, like this Science Alert one here. The truth. Here's the truth about the photo of mushrooms growing on Mars. No, that's just their opinion. Okay, there are different opinions, and as always, the scientific fraternity are split one way or the other on this. They're pro and against this kind of thing. I'm obviously pro, and a lot of scientists aren't, but the ones that are anti this stuff are usually much more loud-mouthed and opinionated than the ones who are pro, and think that their opinions are more important for some reason, whereas I don't think they are, because I think they're wrong. And there are other examples of fungi in that playlist that I just showed you. This is the one at the top. This thing looks, I'll just show you a bit of that actually. This thing looks like a boot, but it's not. I think this is fungi. This is also from years ago. This is from 2015, February. So that's that's going back a few years now. It's 4 years ago. There we have it. I'll pause it there. This looks like fungi. It's very white, pale and white, and it's sitting on top of a rock, and there's a larger part to it here, sticking up, coming round, and there's another little smaller part behind. It may not be fungi, maybe something else. Don't know, can't prove it until somebody takes a sample. And of course, the rover doesn't take samples of interesting things, it just takes samples of pebbles and bits of rock on the ground, generally. Okay, so let's get on with it. Now what I've got here, I've got both images, and obviously there's two images of this. I've got the lower one and the one higher up, and I've clipped them the same size and applied exactly the same enhancement to each one. So they both have the same amount of contrast and colour correction and sharpness added, exactly the same, but they're very slightly different, as they would be, because obviously these were taken a while apart. In fact, I'll show you the raw clips here, just to prove what I'm trying to get to across here. Here's one of them. Okay, that's the one where it's near the bottom of the image. There's one. Okay, there it is down there. And here's the other one where it's near the top of the image, up here. Okay, above this angled rock. There we are. And in fact, the definition is slightly better on that one for some reason. Just the light's obviously changed very, very slightly in the time between the two photographs, because they weren't obviously taken at exactly the same time. They were taken probably a couple of minutes apart. Okay, so the light has changed very, very slightly. So there's slightly better definition in the one which is further up for some reason. But it's just the way the light's hitting it. So let's have a look at those again. This is the one further up here. As you can see, there's not a lot of difference, but there is a very, very slight difference in this part of the image here, where this one seems to have more detail just there. Obviously I've enhanced the brightness and contrast on both of them, but I've applied exactly the same amount to each one, just to see if there's any differences. And on this one, you can actually see, let's zoom into this one a bit. If you look at the main column, or trunk, let's call it a trunk for now, whatever, the body here, if you look to the left of it, you've got this appendage which looks like a leaf, or you've got like an arm or a leaf coming out here. There's slightly more detail in there than there is on this one. There's more detail. But of course, some of this is down to pixelation as well, because what I did, I cropped the images very carefully, and one was 53 pixels. I measured it. I counted the pixels. There was 52 in this one, from one end, from the right to the left, and there was 53 in this one. So this was 1 pixel wider than that one. So that's obviously where, you know, the image has got slightly more, maybe a bit more shadow in this one here. I don't know, but there is a very slight difference. If you look at the shadow here, it's very, very slightly different. There's not a lot in it, and there's slightly more sharpness here. We got like a white thing there in the shadow. This one is more kind of pronounced. So some of the details are slightly different in each one, but they do look almost identical, as they should. And we've got the main column or body with an appendage here, something sticking up here, and like another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 appendages or limbs. This one looks like a leaf. Got like 3 parts to it. Okay, like some leaves do. This one is more kind of rounded, but there's more detail on this one. You can see 2 parts there. So there's detail to be seen here, and there's something sticking up on top there, and there's interesting detail here. I mean, this almost looks like a mouth here. Some people did actually say, when I first uploaded the video, that this looks like a creature with like a head with a mouth and a nose here, and these could be antlers. I thought, yeah, maybe. Types of coral do have animalistic and human-like features, things like brain coral, and I have shown examples of what look like brain coral on the surface of Mars in recent videos, mainly from about a year or so ago. And you've got these interesting structures. Now, coral can create very interesting structures, which often look like faces or brains or whatever, or limbs, okay? And of course, this may have been underwater, this part of the crater here, probably was at one point. So this may actually be an encrusted or calcified piece of coral that was once underwater. It may not be a cacti, it may not be a plant of that sort. This may be the skeleton of a plant. But it does look quite green, and in fact, if you compare the 2 images here, I've not added any colour to this. I've only colour corrected them. I've used auto colour correct, right? And you've got green patches here, around here, and just behind it. More so in this one than this one, I think. Up here, where my cursor is, there's kind of a green patch. There's a green patch here. There's a bit of green there trying to show through, and it's kind of showing in this one as well, but not quite as much. But there is kind of some green tint to the actual thing itself, just here on this one, not so much on this one. So it really does depend on how the light's reflecting and hitting the object or plant or fossilized coral, whatever it is. Could it be fungi? Doesn't look like fungi, but what it could be is a rock with fungi growing off of it. And these are kind of fungi limbs coming off. Who knows? Some people who watched the original video did say that some of it may not actually all be joined. I agree. That this part that sticks up here on the right kind of goes off behind and sort of joins up with this. So what we may be seeing just here is an object behind that looks like it's joined here, and it may not be. This is a bit confusing. And of course, when you have fairly low res images, it's almost impossible sometimes to say exactly whether something is in front or behind, because they're not in focus, and this is a bit of a distance away. If we were looking down on the object, if it was closer to the rover and we were looking down on it more, we'd be able to see what was attached more definitely, be less ambiguous. So that's it really. I mean, you can see the similarities, but this one does seem to have more detail here. Very interesting. And they're going close. I'll put all these clips in a minute anyway, so you can see the close-ups, but you've got some interesting things going on here. There's like a semicircular part there, and there's kind of like interwoven kind of shapes here, almost like coral, similar to coral, I would say, where you've got kind of like interlocking parts, like almost like brain coral. But of course then we've got these 5 limbs sticking out, if that's what they are. And I don't mean human-like limbs, I mean plant-like limbs, like you get on a cacti or a rubber plant or something like that, maybe. So there we are. I'll very, very quickly show you the folder and show you the raw clip of one of those, completely raw. There we are. It's a bit fuzzy because it's too close. Let's go back a bit. There we are. It's the raw clip, completely raw, and it's there. You can see those quite clearly. In fact, if you go back a bit, it looks better. Let's go back a bit like that, because it does get very fuzzy. The raw clip's only 52 or 3 pixels wide, this part of the image, so, but that's enough. That's enough to show the detail. It may not sound a lot, but it is enough because this thing isn't very big. So there we have it. And you can see that nose-like shape and the mouth-like shape there in the raw image, like a lower lip here. I'm not saying that that's what it is. You can see that semicircular part there. You can see what look like 2 kind of dark nostrils. Very odd indeed. Is it possible that this is actually a head that has fungi growing on the moisture that was left in the head, if this was a dead creature or person? Or it's possible. It's possible. It's unlikely, but it is possible. I have found lots and lots of other specimens which look like skulls and heads, and some of them are very clear, and they do seem to have growth on them like fungi. Now, of course, if you were fungi on a planet where there was almost no water on the liquid water on the surface, or even in the air, then anything with any moisture in it would be considered food, and the spores may start growing on something immediately. This happens on Earth, where they find sort of dead animals or even dead people that have gone missing, say for a whole year, and they found them in the forest, and they find them, they've got fungal growth all over them, they've got kind of mushrooms growing on them, and all sorts of fungi and weird things growing on them. So there are certain types of mushroom that grow specifically on Earth, this is, on dead creatures or on cattle dung, that kind of thing. They're dead trees and dead plants, or some of them prefer sort of dead animals or people to grow on, and some of them prefer dead trees and plants to grow on. So they're what you might call parasitic plants, a lot of them, although a lot of them actually grow on dead things rather than on living trees and stuff like that, which would then be considered parasitic. So there we are. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.